Hello, my fellow extraordinary Americans. My name is Cosmos Dar, and this is Extraordinary America. What is Extraordinary America? Well, you see, America has always been about freedom, opportunity, and the pursuit of happiness. However, most Americans are not free when it comes to the financial front. Most Americans are suffering from financial slavery due to loss of jobs, stagnant wages, inflation, and debt. Wealth and income inequality is the norm now, and the middle class has all but disappeared. So Extraordinary America is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%. It is about the nation of immigrants and the descendant of immigrants restoring the extraordinary within themselves and setting themselves free. The path to financial freedom is through financial education. It is through becoming entrepreneurs and investors on the light side. In this podcast, I interview fellow Americans who fought against the odds. Many of them came from humble beginnings to see how they did it. It is my hope through these interviews that the extraordinary within you shall awaken and that you will abolish financial slavery from your life and realize the American dream. Once again, welcome to Extraordinary America. Welcome back to the show, my fellow Story Americans. For today's guest, we have Sophie Alcorn. Sophie Alcorn is a top 10 California immigration entrepreneur and thought leader. She's a certified specialist attorney in immigration and nationality law by the State Bar of California and Board of Legal Specialization. Her mission is to help people harness their strengths, follow their hearts, find direction in their goals, and live their dreams in the United States. She founded Alcorn Immigration Law, which is considered the top immigration law firm for startups in California. Global entrepreneurs, investors, and even countries frequently seek her counsel on immigration, mobility, and economic policy. She also authors TechCrunch's advice column called Dear Sophie and hosts the podcast called Immigration Law for Tech Startups. And she also helps draft the new legislation which helps shape America's immigration future. Lastly, she has been featured in Business Insider, the New York Times, and Teen Vogue. I have her as a guest today because I believe that she represents the American identity of the immigration identity and also the pioneering and entrepreneurial spirit that Americans need today, right? And she's an extraordinary American. I am honored to have her as a guest on the show today. Sophie, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am. Thank you
Hey,
for
so
having me.
yeah, thank you for being on the show. Sophie, I know that you are an entrepreneur who specializes in immigration. You're an attorney and also a podcaster. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Sure, thank you. I grew up as the daughter of an immigration lawyer and an immigrant, and was often inspired by all the stories I got to hear from my dad about all of his clients who were extraordinary new Americans from all over the world. At that time, moving to the Los Angeles area in the 80s and 90s, that was the environment I grew up in. And when I came of age and got my degree, I studied international relations at Stanford and then decided to go to law school. I knew that I wanted to probably be more things than a lawyer. But I'm very glad for my legal background because it's allowed me to become an entrepreneur in the legal space. And the main thing that my law firm does, Alcorn Immigration Law, is we help brilliant individuals from around the world who are people of extraordinary ability, who are creating jobs and companies in the United States and building things in the national interest. We help them and their families and their new employees live and work legally in the United States. So it's an honor and a privilege, and I love doing this type of work because I can see the spiral effect out, the fractal effect out into the world of the impact that my clients have.
That's awesome. So, Sophie, what is your overarching goal and vision when it comes to your career, especially like when it comes to immigration law?
Um, Thank you. The big question would be, how do I help people most effectively at scale to be able to follow their hearts and live out their dreams. So for me in the immigration law and startup space, that translates to how can I help 1,000 or 10,000 as the next, little Steve Jobs running around in their homes in Venezuela or
That's
South
awesome.
Africa to be able to be fully empowered to live in a safe place where they have access to all the resources, capital, mentors they need so that they can blossom into that most full version of themselves, regardless of the circumstances of their birth.
So like as a continuation of this, right? Like what was like from when you decided to do all of this, what was your foundational motivation or the why that led you towards this career versus like any other career?
Mm. Well, it was a long and windy road, and I didn't know I would end up here. I just knew that certain things didn't feel right and certain things felt better. So I've just always tried to listen to that inner voice of knowing about when something feels right, go for it. And if something's off or it's not clear, then maybe it's not right. And so to iterate, pivot, relaunch, test. For most of my academic years, I specifically just said I don't want to be an immigration lawyer because I didn't want to copy my dad, and I didn't want to, um, be in a situation working with him where my job was perceived as being based on nepotism. For example, I wanted to pave my own way. Um, So I studied international relations because it was the thing that aligned most closely to my values of understanding how people, are raised in different cultures and how we can interact and how we have different organizational systems for our countries and, what that means philosophically and anthropologically in different countries around the world. I love studying languages. I've lived in several countries and I love that moment of like when you start dreaming in a new language, there's like this whole other world of understanding that opens up where concepts, just like new concepts exist when you adopt a new language that is rooted around this concept. So I studied international relations and then thought, well, probably best to get some sort of grad school over with. So what's like a multi-purpose degree? I don't necessarily want to be locked into academia. I wanted to be doing things. I had a radio show in undergrad, and at some point I got frustrated because at that time I was like, I don't want to be talking about the news. I want to be making the news. So I ended up in law school. That was a powerful foundation, but also it's a really challenging education. Lawyers get hazed by the educational system to be worst case scenario thinkers, but of course that's what you want your lawyer to be looking out for you and to be able to
Lawyers get a lot of lawyers. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like they get a lot of bad rap, but they're still a necessity, you know?
Yeah, and that's like the most effective lawyer for a client is somebody who's like always mitigating the risk of the worst case possible outcome. But that's a tough way to live as a human being. Like that mode of thinking is great to be a strong lawyer, but it for me didn't work so well for like happiness or interpersonal relationships.
Like, does it give you like a pessimistic outlook on life? Like just all is
Yeah,
looking at the world.
yeah. That like everything that like anything that's like when I had my kid, he was like 1 and he hit another toddler at the park and took her shovel. And the other mom chewed me out because her more mature 1-year-old girl, wouldn't do that to people. And I went to this shame spiral where I ended up at the public library researching like psychological treatises on child development. I took all the research. I made this huge outline, like trying to diagnose if my kid was doing developmentally appropriate things or not. And like I was, spotting every potential issue, analyzing the risk associated with it, making my arguments to myself. And at the end of the day, I was like, oh, okay, I'm an okay mom. My kid is doing fine. So like, but that's that like absurd mode of thinking that I took from my law career when I was faced with a personal problem, because that was my tool set for how to think about things. So I prefer the creative mode and trying to expand zero sum games into positive sum games. And so that's why I like the business of law and the business of immigration and helping people, access visas where they thought that none existed for them. So that's what I gravitate towards more now personally.
So Sophie, like in your field, which is a combination of business and immigration law, right? What is the biggest lesson you ended up learning over the years while you were in this field?
Hmm. It changes, but the one I've been thinking about most recently has to do with how by putting ourselves in the environment, we can accelerate becoming the person we want to be, who we think would be in that environment. So when I went from stay-at-home mom to solo practitioner attorney, and I was just starting my law firm, my self-confidence was shot, and I would just tell myself, like, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it, because believe it because you already are it. But like, I
What
didn't.
do you think about the fake it till you make it mantra? Because a lot of people go by that. It seems to succeed, but a lot of people think it's also genuine. But as an entrepreneur, what's your take on it?
Well, it helped me get through a time when I really didn't believe in myself. But as I look back, I didn't actually have to fake anything. All I had to do was believe in myself. I wasn't doing anything. All the things I were doing came from a place of integrity, and I was competent, and I was doing my due diligence to make sure I was doing the right thing every time. The only missing piece was I didn't believe in myself, and I was super insecure. Um, so I think it has its place because it helped me at that stage. But at some point I had to switch the language to like fake it till you believe it, because I realized that like the only limiting factor was just my self-belief and image of myself. It wasn't that I was actually an imposter or doing something I shouldn't be doing. I was eminently qualified. Um, but now as I've put myself in the Silicon Valley environment, and I see it rubbing off on me. And um, when I was an undergrad at Stanford around the dot-com boom and bust, I had a lot of jealousy of the tech people who were in the startup world. And I um,
Why is that?
instead of asking myself, oh, Sophie, is that because that's something you aspire to do, to, have an organization of that magnitude and impact on the world that is at that scale? Um, I come from like Catholic roots, and that has a lot to do with like martyrdom and money is bad, and you should like selflessly serve others and not look for any like outside validation. And like money is bad essentially. So instead of like asking myself, oh, Sophie, do you just want to be a startup founder? I was like, no, that's for those people. I'm going to do a noble career of helping people. Um, so I think I probably wanted all of that for a long time, but didn't yet know how to admit it to myself. But now being in Silicon Valley and working with all these founders and seeing all the extraordinary new Americans who are creating products, and it definitely gets my juices flowing. And oh, we could do this or we could do that, and it's just so fun to be in that environment of fast-paced creativity. And so now I'm like looking at things at my law firm of like, no, we just have to get product market fit people, and like the jargon and the language rubbing off right in another sector that really had nothing to do traditionally with that type of business environment. It's fun and it's exciting. So it's sort of like another version of fake it till you make it. It's like, put yourself in that situation, do your best. Eventually it will rub off on you one way or another.
So Sophie, you you talked about like your religious roots where they talk about how money is bad, you should be selfless and everything. But we understand in today's world that you have to have resources and at least financial resources in order to make any sort of impact. So what would you tell the audience who has religious roots and who have like bad ideas about money? And how would you talk to somebody who's like, oh, money's pretty bad, and then like, but at the same time, like they want to make a change or something like that, you know? Would
That's
be
really tough because being in that, it's like if you're like a fish in a fishbowl, it's really hard to imagine what it would be like to, you know, be in a different fishbowl or walk on land or be in the ocean, right? It's like hard to imagine something that you haven't tasted yet. But I mean, my current belief system is different. My beliefs have definitely shifted and evolved over the years. And now I would say that money is simply a tool. It's an expression, like a 3D physical world manifestation of energy. And whatever you put out into the world to create value for others, you have the option of, you know, reclaiming some of that in the form of currency as a measure of that value. And money is it's just a tool. There's people who use, you know, it's just like,
it's neutral.
or it's just a medium. And whether you're a person of integrity, you know, as a separate matter, and whether you use your money to promote your values, and if those are good values, right? I think it's not really the polarity between like right and wrong and good or bad. It's just you know, money is available if you want it. There are ways to earn it. And you can be a good person and create wealth, and you can choose how to deploy that wealth in things that you believe in that have a positive impact on the world.
No, I totally agree with you. But it's important for the audience to know that because a lot of people at the subconscious level, they've been brainwashed to believe money is evil, but ultimately it's neutral. It's how we utilize it, whether we're going to use it for good or for bad, that ultimately decides the fate, you know? Um, so Sophie, on a different note, um, you are a female entrepreneur who is also a mother. And you know, a lot of women out there actually want to be entrepreneurs, but they have a family and they're really afraid of the fear of failure and financial ruin, and they want to go into a field and they want to succeed. You're one of the few people that have actually been not only have you gone into the hurdle of being like a female entrepreneur, but also you have a child that succeeded in spite of that. What advice would you give to other women out there, especially ones who have children, on starting business or even going into law?
Mm. Yeah, and I'm a single mom too. I got divorced in this whole process, so I had to figure out how to make it on my own in Silicon Valley, which has a very high cost of living. And I went from having, you know, given up my career and didn't really have a network here when I started everything. It was very scary. There were lots of like dark hours of the soul, and it's not for the faint of heart. I think that if I right because that I mean, I think for a lot of parents, right, you just want stability and security for your children and for them to have the best life possible, and so that can feel at odds with personal empowerment or taking risks to create something greater than what was there before. Um, Sometimes I think that it's sort of like you knew all the drops on the roller coaster, you might not strap yourself in. for the ride. But if you're in it and you're committed and you're strapped in, you're just gonna grow because there's only one way and it's forward. So,
But
so
but
that
it's a
be a very
really
powerful motivation. But at that point, there's not a lot of choice either. The only option is to succeed, and that's an intense situation that isn't necessarily the right thing for everybody to put themselves in if they have a choice.
yeah, but like we're talking about like like let's say a mother with children like who's trying to be an entrepreneur at the same time. Like you have to think of the kid as well. You know, there's the fear of financial ruin. There's like a lot of factors that could go wrong. But but you're saying that they should like just keep moving forward no matter what. Then
I think that whether to embark on this journey is, a very personal decision that everybody has to make for themselves based on what's in their hearts and doing the right thing for themselves and their family. It's not for everybody, but if somebody has done that, deep inner work of discernment about whether entrepreneurship is right for them and whether they want to do it, it's it's totally possible. I recommend having accountability partners and mentors and support, and to avail yourself of financial resources and investment, and to have people in your life who will help you, who can either help fund you or invest, or who will help you create a solid business plan. Like if you're going into entrepreneurship from not having any background, it's very important to be prepared. But if you do those things, I think that it's just as possible for a woman with kids to succeed as it is for a man without kids, for example. I've done it.
that's really inspiring to hear. Yeah, a lot of people out there need this inspiration because I mean they're gonna see you. They're gonna be like, you know what, she's managed to do it. I think I have it. Yeah, I could do it as well.
Yeah, it's like living life on our own terms. Who's gonna dictate? Is it society? Is it culture? Is it pressure? Is it fear of failure? Or is it uh, possibility, hope, inner guidance, direction, inner knowingness? Because yeah, where there's a will, there's a way, for sure.
Love that. So, what would you like? What is one thing you wish you'd know before you started at the beginning of like your career? What would you advise uh anybody else who's just starting off in your field, especially like women entrepreneurs who are also lawyers and they want to combine the two together?
Mm. There's like this balance between planning and strategy and execution. And I think the biggest risk is just not moving fast enough, trying to be perfect, and not making enough decisions quickly enough. I am of the philosophy that it's, for me and my personality, it has worked better to launch and iterate. So just get something out there, try to, get feedback from customers, clients in my case, right? Um, but just do it, because you're going to learn 1,000 times more from the actual process than you could in a vacuum with a whiteboard or a Google Doc planning something out. So just, give it your best go, but at some point you're going to hit a planning wall with marginal return. So just get something out there, anything, sell it, figure out if people even want to buy it, or if they buy it, how it goes for them, right? And then from there, you have so much valuable information, and failure is a super valuable source of information, right? Everything that
Love that
doesn't
too.
work. Thank you. Yeah, everything that doesn't work is an indicator of what might work instead, or how to do things differently.
It's a different way to look at failure. You know, most people hit failure like, oh, I'm going to give up, but it's just a learning curve.
Yeah.
It's an educational experience. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that you mentioned that.
Thanks. Yeah, like if you make, you know, 10 decisions and 9 of them are perfect and one isn't, right? And then you've done 9 perfect things. But if you make, let's say you only have an 80% success rate, or even 50% of your decisions are good, turn out to be the right business decision, but you take 100 shots, right? Then you've made 50 good decisions. And of the 50 that didn't work out, at least you learned. And you've made 50 steps forward instead of just 9 steps forward. So failure is okay. It's not going to be perfect. And that was really hard for me to come from the lawyer mindset, where it is a zero-sum game. You either win the case or you lose the case. It's a totally different way of thinking in business, where it's a different tally system for the game, right? It's like, oh, how profitable is this? How much money is there? Where do I reinvest it? How much can it grow? It's a very different way of thinking.
No, totally. So, Sophie, on a different note, right? America, they say that America is the land of the free and the place where dreams are made. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Oh, I totally agree with that. I think that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and perception creates reality. And the choice whether to be a glass half full type of person, I think that because I've been, raised as a child from a young age to see all the people reaping opportunities in the land of the free and the place where dreams are made, I gravitate towards that, and I see all of the success stories and the examples, and that reinforces my worldview. And just like money, it's neither good nor bad. It's thinking that makes it so. And so for somebody who, wants to pave their own way and make their own opportunity, there's really no better place in the world to do it than the United States. And that's why my immigration law firm is so successful, is because, if you have any business aspirations from anywhere in the world, this is the place of freedom and opportunity and a capitalist system, and lower than average taxes in the world, right? And you can have predictability in your business negotiations, and there aren't mafias taking all your money or government corruption. So like, some very low bar standards for why it's a great place to live and work in the world. But even within the country, of course there are disparities, but I'm a believer in the power of the individual to live their life the way they want to, and to make choices and make decisions to uplift and advance themselves if they
I,
would like to. And I think we can do that here.
I love that you say that, because a lot of Americans in America take the country for granted and all the opportunities that they have. It's usually like immigrants that come from outside that realize that they're so grateful, because there's a contrast, right? Like come from nations where it's difficult to do entrepreneurship, and then they come over here like, wow, we kind of like hit jackpot. That a lot of the people who are natives, like they don't realize what they have, and they're just whining and complaining a lot of the time, to be honest.
Right.
So
There's a generational thing too that happens, where immigrants and the children of immigrants are super successful because they still carry that um, so much of wanting to prove their relatives back home, wanting to make them proud, and wanting to achieve for the whole family unit, what people couldn't do back home, because they feel that, weight of oppression that happened in the former country, or the missed opportunities, or how people sacrificed to help them come here. But after about the next generation, like, they've kind of lost touch with the immigrant heritage. And they're just like very, where it's easy to be privileged and comfortable. And especially over the last 2 years with travel being impacted, you have to really go out of your way to experience different cultures if you're living in the US these days.
No, totally. As a continuation, since we're talking about immigrants and everything like that, and since you're an immigration lawyer, I wanted to get your perspective on it, right? So, America is a nation of immigrants, and it's everybody over here is either immigrants or descendant of immigrants, and we have an immigrant identity. But over like the past so many years, there's been like a wave of like anti-immigration sentiment when it comes to the economy. But you are an entrepreneur and you're in immigration law. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about how immigration can actually positively affect the economy, and like an entrepreneurship, which is basically what American identity is about. What are you, what
Immigrants are essential to America's economic growth, job creation, the tax base, innovation, staying competitive with China. We would do better as a country creating jobs for native-born Americans if we welcomed more immigrants, not just brilliant startup founders, but also skilled workers or even unskilled workers, right? There's a huge crisis in construction and trucking and farming where people need to do jobs for our food supply, for example, right? That Americans don't want to do. Every immigrant is paying taxes, even undocumented people. And they're, keeping our social security fund, having money in it. And then at the most extreme with the innovation and the startup founders, over I think like 55% or more of all $1 billion and higher valued companies created in at least the last 20 years, but maybe further, have at least one immigrant founder. So
wow.
yeah, it's like a no-brainer. And then,
So
we're turning people away. There's people begging to come in, start companies, pay taxes, and create jobs for Americans, and we don't get them visas. And that's why I have a law firm, because I have to help people navigate that. Other countries are giving people hundreds of thousands of dollars to come and create startups, and we're not even letting them in.
No, this is actually really important because the part of the show is like to understand, like, like there's a conception that immigrants are taking jobs, but in reality, if immigrants come in and start companies here, you're actually creating jobs, which will actually help the economy. So there's like,
Even just immigrants going to Walmart and buying food for their families and buying houses, like that pumps money through the economy as well, like even at that level. But yeah.
no, I mean, I didn't know that there's like 55% had at least one immigrant or not. Like that is news. I mean, yeah, it's basically. Because I think the audience and that needs to hear that, because there's always like a misconception that there's like an anti-immigrant sentiment, but if they're going to create jobs, they're going to help pump the economy, then it is important to have, like, it's part of our national identity altogether.
Yeah. Yeah, and where immigration gets it's like the third rail of American politics, and everybody lumps everything together so nobody can agree. So we haven't had immigration reform since 9/11 really in any meaningful way. And there are huge issues with it. But I would contend that there are economic, even at the root, just like self-interested, how rich is America going to be? How much prosperity will we have? Just like that selfish dollars or taxes perspective. I think the evidence is super clear that even, low skill immigration would help with that, especially with like birth rate declining, boomers aging, and there's so many job shortages in America. I have a very different view of what the economy is doing compared to what I think is promoted in mainstream media. And the way I see it, there's tons of opportunity, tons of people would love to work in the United States, and they can't.
So yeah, the reason I've asked you this question is because you have an interesting intersection where you're an immigrant lawyer and you're also an entrepreneur, right? But a lot of people that are into entrepreneurship and economy are more right leaning, the more conservative oriented. But it so happens that there's a thing that the more conservative oriented or the more there's like a wave of anti-immigration, or like they call it legal, but like at the same time we're showing in this audience that no, like you can be an immigrant and you can actually help the economy versus hurting it, because that has been over the coin, from what I'm seeing the last 10, 20 years, there's been a lot of like an anti-sentiment towards it. And it's
Been a ton of anti-immigrant sentiment. And I think it's just that, a lot of people gain from fear mongering. that gets promoted as like the standard of wisdom, but it's not true.
Like personally for me, like as an immigrant, I came to this country, right? Like I'm kind of like I'm pro entrepreneurship and everything like that. But it's like kind of like I've always been like caught between two of these things. Cause like, the same people that are pro entrepreneurship, it seems like there's a stereotype that they're also anti-immigrant. But the identity of America is immigrants and descendants of immigrants and entrepreneurial spirit. And it was just so confusing to me, like what's going on? And yeah, it's I don't
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to put everybody in a box, but
yeah.
you gotta live your life, and not everybody will get it, but that's okay.
No, I love this
You
conversation
can be
'cause
both at the same time and so much more. You can be an immigrant and an entrepreneur.
no, I know that,
And
but but
so
politically it's like, oh,
yeah,
either you're on this side or you're on that side. But
yeah,
the truth of the matter is, like, there are good people out there that want to be entrepreneurial at their also they
yeah.
body the thing.
Right.
So
And if there's money in the world, who would you rather have it? If you're going to define people as good or bad, like, would you rather have the good people have the money or the bad people have the money? So,
no, exactly. So Sophie, what do you think is the biggest hurdle that Americans face when it comes to realizing the American dream, and how do you think they should overcome that?
think that most Americans on the hamster wheel of consumption and buying into the narratives of fear. And so I think from that perspective, where you're always spending money on new items that you're going to give away in 6 months anyway. And I just cleaned out my garage and I just can't believe how much stuff I'm that I've purchased for self-soothing reasons over the last few years. But when everything is presented as the next crisis, the fear, and then all the hours are spent working hard and all the money, goes to pay the bills, I think it's really hard to step away from that and perceive that the American dream is possible, that it is an option, that, of course, there are things to change in the world and change in our country, but where does that start? I think there's like a old Chinese proverb about that, right? It's something like, if you want to change the nation, if you want to change the world, change the nation. If you want to change the nation, change the state, you got to change the city. If you want to change the city, change the family. If you want to change the family, change yourself. So I think that it all,
Totally agree. It all comes down to changing ourselves.
and
It's like the ripple effect.
it's so hard, right? To go from like hamster wheel of fear and consumption to mindfulness, whatever that looks like. It can be a lot of things for different people if they, come to their center walking in the woods or meditating or sitting in a yoga class or whatever, fishing. But being okay with silence, it can be so scary. Because like the thoughts that plague our brains can be so overwhelming sometimes. So it's really hard to um acknowledge even that the American dream is an option for yourself if you feel oppressed by inner demons and fear, because it's scary to like step off the train of comfort and find your own path and risk that people won't understand you or they might not like you or you might lose everything that you thought you had worked so hard to gain. But the thing I'm realizing now is that, yeah, you'll lose those things. But when you get to the point where they leave your life, you're actually not going to mind too much because you've changed and you're a different person and you can let it go. And it's not actually that big.
That's deep. It's all about like self-improvement, which is actually the only true way you can have positive change. instead of blaming other people, we have to start changing ourselves, become better human beings, and then we can affect the communities around us. So, yeah. So,
And by better human beings, just more authentic to ourselves, just doing the right thing in our hearts for what our path is. And that's not going to be standard, right? There's however many billions of people in the world, and we're all different. And that's a good thing.
no, totally. Yeah. So Sophie, I know that you've done this advice column called Dear Sophie, and you also did a podcast called Immigration Law. Can you tell us more about what prompted you to start all of this and a little bit more about that?
Sure. I write an article. It's for the online technology newspaper TechCrunch, which is like the top global startup startup business entrepreneurship technology newspaper publication. I also have a podcast that I started. I started both about 2.5 years ago. The podcast is called Immigration Law for Tech Startups, and it's available on Apple and Google and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. So I've been doing the podcast started as how-tos for immigration, how to get an H-1B, how to get an O-1, how to quit your, big tech job if you're from India and get a green card by yourself to be able to start your startup. So a lot of questions like that in the startup sector. The The column answers readers' questions on related notes every week. That comes out on Wednesdays, and you can subscribe to TechCrunch Plus to gain access to that. So it's been fun, and that happened because I took initiative and stuck my neck out, and I didn't know if it would work or not, but I found out that a few years ago that TechCrunch was looking for a call for experts in Silicon Valley. They wanted to create like a vetted expert service listing directory. And I asked a bunch of people to nominate me, and I had 76 people nominate me.
Congratulations.
Thank
Awesome.
So the TechCrunch people were like, you're clearly an expert. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I'm an imposter. So I just said, like, oh, do you guys ever need like content? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, what if I, helped you with this thing? And then they're like, yeah, we could like publish one thing and try it. And then they liked it, right? And I kept offering more. And then, and if you guys ever have a conference or something and you need a speaker, and they're like, oh, you're not. Well, if you're not a venture capitalist who we would want to speak, but then I got a call of like, hey, we just decided to put together this thing for experts. Are you still interested in talking? And I was like, of course. And so then I went to a couple of those conferences in 2019, TechCrunch Disrupt. And then I think I was like washing my hair, and I was like, what if I had an immigration advice column, kind of like that person who answered people's dating issues like in the 90s in newspapers called Dear Abby? What if people like wrote in their about their broken hearts about immigration, and I could answer their questions? Wouldn't that be funny? And I pitched it to them, and they're like, yeah, we could run it a little bit, and it worked. So it's been going
That is awesome.
years now. It's super fun.
I would definitely advise my audience to take a look at that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you follow me on Twitter, Sophie_Alcorn, every month now I'm doing a Twitter live with TechCrunch to answer folks' questions around the world live. It's super fun. It's like an hour each month.
Awesome. So, Sophie, is there any other work that you're doing right now that you want to let the audience know or give them a glimpse into?
Thank you so much. My main focus is, so just coming from the world of professional service provider to becoming a business owner. And then I had to figure out brand and marketing. And, now the thing that is needed for my firm to continue to scale is internal automations. So I'm just head down on building and reimagining, the best client experience possible of like, we have such beautiful products and wonderful apps that we can use, but there's so many things about humans that are hard to work with. And so I'm just trying to think about from a business perspective, what's the best
You almost sound like an alien over there. Humans, huh?
Well, all my clients are aliens, so it really like, how do we
I know I
get
was an
humans?
alien myself once upon a time, so.
Wonderful. It's a badge of honor, truly, because it's a testament to your grit and determination and everything that journey has meant for you and your family, which I'm sure is not insignificant. So, no, it's a wonderful thing to be able to say.
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. So, Sophie, where can our audience connect with you and get to know more of what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. Sophie Alcorn, the law firm is called Alcorn Immigration Law. We're at alcorn.law. And there you can contact us to get information about our visa and green card services, as well as enroll in our Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp online course to get an Extraordinary Ability visa or green card or national interest waiver green card by yourself from anywhere in the world. So we have that educational content for you, and you can also subscribe to the blog there and the podcast. So we'd love to, stay engaged and keep in touch. And I'm always excited to, consider new opportunities in the space or speak to groups. So, very excited to just connect with any listeners and keep in touch. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, Sophie, that concludes the show for today. Thank you so much for having us, coming to the show and everything. And you are an extraordinary American, and not only that, you're an inspiration to female entrepreneurs that want to take the chance to do entrepreneurship and become financially free themselves. You know,
Thank you, Cosmos. I
yeah.
appreciate it.
Well, we would definitely want to have you back in the show at some future time.
I would
Yeah.
love that. Thank you
I'll,
so much.
I want to conclude this show by telling my fellow extraordinary Americans that, hey, look, there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us, and it's our job to empower and unleash them. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey there, everyone. Thank you for watching Extraordinary America. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. Remember that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is in your own financial education, for it is knowledge that truly sets you free. Also remember that your purchasing power is being diluted through inflation, and then the practical thing to do is to protect the loss of your purchasing power by investing in precious metals or the right cryptocurrencies. Also, never forget that you are an extraordinary American. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.